Hey, deserving listeners, 90 Day Fiancé, let's watch. My name is Dr. Kirk Honda. I'm a therapist and a professor. As I always say, everything that I say on this channel, because it's a psychology channel, might contain triggering material, so watch with care. Let's watch.
It's actually just a maturity thing. It's a maturity thing. She's not willing to talk through the hard conversations, and she's not willing to see my perspective. She just thinks I'm here to play games.
A maturity thing. You know, I think we need some sort of working definition from the cast members regarding what maturity means. So, is it possible that Mahogany in 25 years will look back at this and say, wow, I was young, I hadn't figured things out yet, I didn't really know what I was doing, and I am embarrassed about that behavior. I mean, think about, I don't know about y'all, but when I think about the stuff that I did when I was 22, I cringe. Perhaps at almost everything I did when I was 22. I cringe. So, well, and is that what we mean by maturity? You know, maturity is one of those terms that is thrown around a lot. There are certain markers of maturity that are pretty obvious, you know, like when a 4-year-old has a temper tantrum, and then by the time they're 8 years old, they no longer have temper tantrums. They communicate in other ways, or they are able to emotionally regulate themselves, you know, at an 8-year-old level. We call that maturity often. There's also, you know, sexual maturity, this kind of thing. But anyway, so, but I think what Ben is referring to is, well, I think there's two things he's referring to, honestly. I think one of them is he's really realizing, my goodness, she is young, and it's hard to communicate with her because of how youthful she is, and how younger people, how people without a lot of experience, the way that they might approach situations, you know, because that's the other thing. It doesn't have to do with age, right? It has to do with often experience and your issues as they relate to your ability to learn from experiences. You know, you look at someone like, well, Ben, for example. I mean, the fact that he fell for what seems to be some sort of a catfishing kind of, I mean, at the very least, before he met Mahogany, all indications were that he was being catfished, or at the very least played with. And the fact that he didn't accept that, you could, and even though everyone was telling him that, including his own kids, I mean, I don't know exactly what they were telling him, but, you know, they were saying it was fake, that you could argue that's an immaturity issue. Is it immaturity? You know, in terms of psychological development, in my field, we have a working definition of maturity, but those kinds of things, once you get past a certain age, you're delineating between different adult reactions to things. Because one could argue that it's very mature for Mahogany to walk away from a situation that she doesn't like. Might be immature to stay in a situation when she doesn't want to stay in a situation that would be deemed by some people as immature. So you get my point. It's like, what? So I think Ben is referring to that. It's like, wow, according to his perception, he's like, wow, she's really young. But I think another part of it is he's looking for some narrative, because he's done this throughout, really, of why is this not working out? In my head, I had this vision of how things would be. And I think in his head was there was going to be pure love in the eyes of God. It would be God engineered and approved of, and stamp of approval by Jesus. And everything was going to be romantic and love and magical. And for the first time in his life, he would be able to have what he always wanted to have, what a lot of people want. And he lands in Peru, and it's the opposite of that. And so I think that's another reason why he keeps bringing up these other words of like, oh, this is maturity, God has hardened her heart, or she's making choices, instead of, and I think maybe there's a part of him that's reckoning with this now, that maybe she never liked me at all.
quiero subir a un carro e irme. Ahora.
Súbete al carro.
¿Dónde está el carro?
So she walks away. Now, if she would have said, we're done, I don't want to talk to you anymore, that would be more definitive, which I think is what's happening, but she didn't say that. I don't know if I showed the clip, but they just had that conversation on that bench, I think by the beach. And I think he was starting to realize, or at least most of him, 60% of him was realizing, I don't think this is going to work, and I don't think she even likes me. This is just my hypothesis. But he's still curious, which of course most people would be. What is in her heart really? Did she ever love me at all? What's going on here? How could this happen? Over texting, you were talking about love and kids and forever, and you were saying you were in love with me, and I've never felt that in person. Like, what happened there? Were you just tricking me the whole time? I'm guessing that there's a part of him that wants to know. So he calculated that if he confronted her, she wouldn't respond. So he tried to lay the groundwork by apologizing and having conversations and then he's like, what's in your heart? You said you were 24 when you were 22. Like, I think that was his lead into like, were you lying to me about other things? I'm just guessing. He kind of had that demeanor to me. When he asked that question quite directly, instead of making excuses for her, in other situations that like he did in the past, she just walked away. She's like, I'm leaving now. All he asked was, how come you said you were 24? Now, if she said something like, I don't appreciate you grilling me, I'm leaving now. Or I don't appreciate you accusing me of lying, I'm leaving now. Or I never wanted to be with you anyway, I'm leaving now. But that's not what she said. She just says, I'm leaving now. And so he probably still feels like, well, I'm still curious. Why are you leave? Why did you leave? Let's add that to tell me what's going on in your heart. You were very disclosing over texting before I got down here. What's in do you like me? Did you ever like? Anyway, but she walks away, and then she says to the producers, get me out of here. And that's the first time we've been shown, at least, like, let me out. I do not want to be here. You could, of course, some people interpret that as she's being abused and groomed and all that kind of stuff. And I suppose you can make an argument for that. We'd have to know the experience. And I mean, you could add the producers in that too, because the producers are trying to make a show, right? So they don't want Mahogany to go home. And so she goes to the producers like, get me out of here. And then Ben is starting to come over. We all understand the producers could have said, Ben, just, don't. Or did they actually tell Ben to go over there? We don't know. Anyway, so now Mahogany is trying to get away. And if you're Ben, you should just let it go. Just go home. He should have gone home a long time ago. But again, it makes sense. And I know that people like to make fun of and ridicule people in Ben's position. But just think about it for yourself. You fall in love. Let's imagine you fall in love. If you've had that experience before, it's like an addiction. It involves similar processes of the brain of compulsive behavior, like towards cocaine or heroin or gambling or something. All you want to do is be with that person. And so when you're getting indications that they don't want to be with you, and it's not very clear, because Mahogany is not, body language, she's been clear, demeanor, she's been clear, at least to me, but not verbally. And all she has to do is turn around and go, Ben, I don't want to see you ever again. I break up with you. I'm sorry. We're done. Like, she could just say that. Doesn't take much to say that, but she isn't saying that. She hasn't said it. Anyway, at least to my knowledge. So, what am I saying? What I'm saying is, like, it would make sense that for Ben that he would still be like, can we talk? What's going on here? Now, of course, there's this huge age gap. How do we feel about that? I don't know. I've been saying this from the beginning. If she were 17, it would be clear that there's something criminal and immoral about this situation. She's 22. I don't know how to feel about that. Is there a power differential? I think there definitely is in terms of knowing what. Let's go down this road. I haven't really gone down the specific questions. Who has more power? Does someone have more power, and are they being exploited? I mean, you could really ask that question about literally every person on the show, that they're being exploited. Because the thing that people people do sometimes, but at least I don't, is there's a triangulation with the producers and the camera people and us. We are involved, and they know we're involved, especially right there. They're like the producers right there, camera person, and the producers are pretty heavily involved. They're in conversations with these people as things are happening. You know, Mahogany knows. She goes right to the producers, like, get me a car, get me a... So it would be relevant to ask, is the true power player the producers in the television show over everyone or one person? Are they using money as a incentive to exploit them and to dangle in front of them, or the promise of fame and power in the future? I think those are absolute. I mean, now that I say it out loud, it's like, wow. But we don't know, because of course they don't show us those data, and the individuals rarely speak up about their experiences about that. And we could imagine for some of these people, they like the producers. Some people we know have been exploited. And I think there are some people who have come forward. We can't know the veracity, the truthfulness of those statements. But anyway, we could imagine that happening. It's a reality TV show. Anyway, but is there a power differential? Does Mahogany feel safe to say to Ben, I don't want to be with you? Because that's a pretty important question. You know, it's one of the questions I'll ask clients that I'm wondering, are they in an abusive relationship? Is there a power? Are they being exploited? You know, a key element of freedom and at least some semblance of power is the ability to say, I don't want to be with you, or I don't want to talk to you, get away from me. Do you, not only can you do that, but do you feel safe even saying it out loud? Now, if they don't feel safe, that leads to a second question, is it reasonable that they don't feel safe? Because some people will not feel safe because they're projecting a past person onto their partner. And their current partner isn't doing anything aggressive and has no indications of being exploitative or violent or controlling or coercive, but the individual who feels victimized is projecting that. We don't want to blame the victim. We don't want to automatically assume that. Obviously, we want to be very careful about going down that road of hypothesis, but that can happen. Or is it legit in that the individual that they feel unsafe around is actually doing things to make the victim feel unsafe? So do we think that for Mahogany, that she feels unsafe, that she can't say, I don't want to be with you? I mean, the first thought that comes to mind is that the producers are pretty heavily involved in that emotional situation, right? But does she feel safe with Ben? Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know what's going on inside of her, but has Ben indicated that? I think everything points to, if Mahogany turned around right now and said, Ben, I'm done with you, I'm pretty sure Ben would be like, okay, and would go home. I don't think he's going, I don't think he's going to be like Mike and Jimena. I don't think he's going to lay into her. I don't think he's going to put hands on her. I don't think he's going to refuse to let her go. I don't think Ben would do that. I can't know that he wouldn't. So that's one question, in terms of the age gap, because age can correlate with power in terms of your ability to assert things. Of course, gender plays in political power, nationality, standing in a particular social situation.
Okay.
Mahogany?
God bless you.
Wow. I mean, Ben, just turn around, fly home, put this whole thing behind you. I mean, what are you doing? Now, of course, we see in a rare instance, the producer, I think, is there, camera person, and Ben. So it's not just Ben going over the car, it's everyone going over the car. And we all understand that there are contracts involved, there are producers are like, we got to get content. So I don't know, because this whole time with Ben and Mahogany, I'm just like, what is happening here? I don't understand. There's certain couples like Memphis and Hamza. There's never been a moment with them where I thought, what's happening? I was just like, I know it looks genuine. It feels like the situations are completely grounded in reality. But with this couple, since he's been to Peru, I'm just like, what is happening? And it gets frustrating. Anyway.
If she genuinely thinks she did not hide her age, she doesn't remember telling me anything, and it was just not a problem, she still should understand where I'm coming from. She should know that it looks like that to me, and just be able to give me a break and let me say my piece. That's where the maturity level comes in.
So now the first part I get, that he wants to say his piece. That's pretty normal. That when you feel like treated unfairly, you want to get some things off your chest. Not everyone. You're not entitled to that, but people often feel that way. But then he says it's a maturity thing, which, I don't know, how often he has brought up, well, really both of them have brought up maturity, but particularly him. It makes me wonder if he sees the world that way, and if he does, did that play a role in his? Because just imagine that I'm his age. I'm 51. I think he's 51. Imagine me dating, entertaining a relation. Even, I don't know. I mean, I have my wife, so obviously that's not an issue. But I'm just trying to imagine the mindset of someone in their 50s that would date someone of that age, right? Can that work out? Sure, it can, and it sometimes does. Can it be non-exploitative? Sure. But I'm just wondering if Ben bringing up this maturity, that's what he goes to in terms of like, something's wrong here. She's immature. If it somehow he's, I don't know. I mean, I could see that going in a lot of different ways. That let's just hypothesize. There's no data regarding any of these with Ben, but if I just heard this case, I would say, well, let's brainstorm some avenues to go down. One is that he feels that he needs to find someone pure and younger who is not tainted by society or other men. Certainly, we know people that will have that mindset, which is ridiculous, as if women that are older or who have a past are tainted or dirty. I mean, there are people who literally believe that. It's just like, huh? It's a complete double standard, gender-wise. Is it that he doesn't relate to people his own age and actually feels more comfortable? Is it that he is having what the internet will call a midlife crisis? And, so let me talk about that, because I've heard some people commenting about Ben and midlife crisis, because he fits the stereotype. There is no such thing as a midlife crisis, by the way. It's not a scientific reality. When we study human beings, there's no universal pattern or even slight signal there. There's a lot of research on this and development and aging and certain decades of life that can have some commonalities, but people are too varied. Yeah, particularly today, our lives take very different courses. We all develop, particularly as an adult, at different kind of ways. But the idea that at 40 to 50, one could suddenly reckon with one's death or one's decline in health, or your kids have moved out of the house. There's certain markers in life that have some commonalities. And then because you go to school, you go to college, you try to build up your career, you meet someone, you get married, you have kids, you get a house, you get a better house, you get a better car. You're just on this path in life. And then all of a sudden you hit 45 or something, and it all just kind of hits you, particularly once empty nest happens or your kids become teenagers and they're just less involved. You're just less involved in their lives. They're more independent. You suddenly stop and think like, wait, where am I going? What have I done? What's the next phase? Did I want any of this? Do I like my marriage? Do I like my job? Do I like any of this stuff? And what will happen for a lot of people is they will start to explore that. And Now, the antidote to that is to always be thinking, is this what I want? But so there's that. Also, to make sure that you don't rush into things and give up things that you want to do. You know, for some people, they want to have a robust dating single life before they get married. They want that phase of life. They want to see what that's like. They want to experiment with different relationships and have some pros and cons of that, and then they'll settle down later or something like that. Not everyone does it this way, but because if you forego that when you want it, which not everyone does, then when you turn 45, you might have all these urges that you suppressed because you never entertained them when you were younger before you got married. Doesn't mean that things can't be done, but anyway, the point is that there's that thing. And so the classic midlife crisis stereotype is you have a 45-year-old man who is now flirting with younger women. He buys the red sports car. He starts dressing younger. He works out more. He starts to talk like a teenager. And that's a stereotype. And it's a pretty rare example of someone. Like I said, the themes of like reckoning with your life and thinking about who am I and what do I want to do with the next phase? If I really self-actualize, is this, where am I heading in life? I want to get these things done before I die or before my health declines or whatever. Are those things common? Yeah. But you can go through that when you're 25. I feel like I went through a midlife crisis when I was 16. I don't know exactly why, but I, at that age, thought very intensely about the fact that I'm going to die one day. I didn't really have a brush with death. I had very few people die in my life. You could argue I didn't have anyone close to me. So there wasn't really a reason. I don't know exactly why I thought about this, but I did. And I went through what people will describe that people go through a midlife crisis. I feel like I went through when I was 16. I don't know why. Anyway, or maybe at 24 when I became a therapist, I had a little bit of a midlife crisis in terms of career, and then I decided to become a therapist. Anyway, so when people say, "Oh, Ben's going through a midlife crisis," well, I think it's because he fits the stereotype that he's, trying to work on his body. He's trying to date someone super young. He is trying to look dapper at a stage of life where some people commonly will give up on fashion, as I feel like I have at my age. And the other twist to this about midlife crisis, people look at people and they'll ridicule, oh, it's just a guy going through midlife crisis. And I'm like, well, one, midlife crisis is a bit of a myth. And two, why is it, if it's a thing, why is it a bad thing? What's wrong with someone, regardless of gender, going, you know what, I always wanted that red sports car and I always bought the minivan for the family and I'm going to buy a car for myself right now. What's wrong with someone reevaluating their life? What's wrong with someone dating someone younger? There's nothing wrong with someone dating someone younger. So, within reason, of course, but so I don't know why it's ridiculable, is that a word? So, yeah. Now, so that's another idea. It's a midlife crisis hypothesis that he is going through that. Another one is that I'm sort of losing track of the hypotheses that I put forth. So that he wants the power, that he feels immature, that he's trying to return to an earlier time in his life, that he feel like he missed or something, and there's some indications of this for him, that he might have felt like he wasted his life, particularly his adult life, and he wants to start over, and he feels like if he dates someone younger, it'll feel like starting over. And I've actually heard this from people that date younger people, is that they kind of see the world through their eyes. And that sounds, maybe it sounds a little sick because it's often what people say about kids, but when you hang out, like when I hang out with younger people in my family, and I hear about the things that they talk about, it's kind of fun to hear, like, oh yeah, like I remember that state of life where everything's before you and you enjoy the little things of life. Because there's certain things that sort of set in, not for everyone, as you age. You start to, maybe get a little jaded or something. Anyway, so is that why it's happening? Is that why he keeps referring to maturity? All right, well, if you want to join the conversation below, that would be great. Always be civil to each other. That's one request that I make. Also, you can join the different fan communities on the Facebook fan page, the Discord channel, the subreddit. I guess Instagram also has comments that people will bounce off each other. Again, try to be civil in those places as well. There are moderators on the Facebook fan page and the Discord. You can always thank them, but also know that those are moderated places where they tend to be more safe to talk about things and to share and to support each other. So join those communities if you want. The link should be below. And everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.